A very good evening to all. This is Prashant from NABH Secretariat. First of all, let me thank to all assessors who have attended our webinar session on 4th edition hospital standards and clinical audit. Now we are here for a webinar session on assessment methodology and assessor behavior, which will be presented by Dr. B.K. Rana, Director NABH, and Dr. Aarti Verma, Chair Assessor Management Committee. So without wasting any time, I would request our eminent speakers to start the session. At the beginning, the first part will be taken up by Dr. Rana, that is assessment methodology. So, sir, I would request you to start the session. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Prashant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Prashant. Thank you very much for setting up this webinar for all our assessors and all participants who have joined now for this webinar on assessment methodology and assessor behavior. I welcome you all. And I hope at the end of the webinar you would have more insight into methodology and on behavior of assessor, which is very critical, which will be taken up by Dr. Aarti Verma. So once again, thank you everyone for joining it, and I'm going to start it at the moment. So the topic I would cover is assessment methodology, and this actually would address issues when you are assigned an assessment and you start your work, how you planned and how you carry out the on-site assessment when asked for a specific surveillance or reassessments or final assessment. So it's a basic which we are now trying to give you an overview. Again, though you have already undergone a training program and had done some of refreshers courses, but it's again important to let all people know and refresh their knowledge and wisdom and practices which they have been using in the past to make the system more homogeneous and more transparent, and certain aspects of assessments can be taken care of. So I will start with what assessment contributes to the whole assessment process and what we mean about assessment. So if you remember, the definition of assessment is basically a systematic, independent, and documented process with an aim to gather the objective evidence and evaluating the system against a set of requirements, whether those requirements which are defined have been fulfilled or not. So that's the whole definition of assessment. So it needs to be systematic. You can't be random. You can't be haphazard, but it needs to be systematic, independent, and that we ensure that this remain independent by virtue of assigning a person who actually is to visit a specific site is not related to that specific organization. And documentation is critical, as you all know, and every time we talk about documentation, there is no record, there is no evidence, so things have never been done. So documentation is very, very critical. And you might come across different terminology, like we use assessment. Sometimes when you conduct audits, internal audits, you call audits, and some of the organizations, some of the accreditation organizations across the globe, they are using the term survey. So these assessment, audit, and surveys are used interchangeably from time to time within a set of organization or by different accrediting organization. What are the general principles of assessment? If you look at this slide, it will say about that it's an effective management tool, and based on the results of any assessment, management can take a decision what needs to be done to make it more effective, what may be required to put system in place to be made more transparent, more accountable, and more strengthening the entire processes. And the core principles are based on its objectivity, as you mentioned through the definition, and its independency in its operations, and a systematic approach. So these are core principles which comes through the definition of assessment. And they're authorized. It's not a women fancy of any one of us, including all secretariat members or the assessors or whosoever are, that they just go into an organization and start assessing. No, they need to be authorized. There need to be prior authorization from NABH Secretariat if you're going to visit an organization for any type of assessment. And they are planned and they are well managed, and this is because this need to be credible. The outcome of any assessment need to be credible, and all the elements and all the personnel are covered. So when you go for an assessment, your aim is to cover all the objective elements of a standards or whatever you define for carrying out that specific assessment, and the personnel which are working in this organization need to be covered. They are conducted using established methods and techniques. So during our assessor training program, we talked about certain techniques and methods, how we use those, and those techniques must be used from time to time during course of that specific assessment to make use of scientific knowledge, that technique, to get the best output for the assessment which you are conducting. And so they are relevant, reliable, and sufficient. There are similar assessment conclusions. The idea behind all these methods used, utilization, is when you conduct similar type of assessment at different occasions, you should get almost similar conclusions. Or if you use a different set of assessors or assessment teams for similar type of assessment, you should get conclusions which are in harmony and which are in agreement with each other. It should not vary from a diverse range. If they vary from basics or from one assessment to another assessment, which actually have been conducted in a very short period of time, then it's not reliable. Probably the method which we used, the techniques we have employed, may not be relevant, and that's why the results are not coming to comparison, which should be actually in comparison. So independence is basically to maintain the impartiality. The basic principle of any audit and assessment is to maintain the impartiality, and there should not be a bias by virtue of either independence in the organization or by human resources. So any man, machine environments sort of things should not come in a way of the independence of organization assessment. So it needs to be biased so that the decision made are unbiased and are transparent. You use evidence-based approach, which means you use the methods which are actually rationalized, and they are bound to give you the reliable and reproducible results, and that's why you make sure that the methods which you use are giving you the reproducible results, which is a very short period of time. And why we should do that? Why we should do that to ensure the system or the processes which we have put in place through the process of audit or any assessment or survey remain systematic, independent, and documented processes are being used. So there are standard requirements, and you all know the requirement for any assessments are the standards, a set of standards, the hospital standards, which are the 4th edition at the moment. So they remain the standards requirement in addition to certain other requirement which organization might be putting into place. And the basic purpose of it is getting the objective evidences. I recently come across a report where the summary says that the assessment team has gone to different areas of an organization, of a hospital, to find the faults where they have been lacking. And this was very unfortunate coming across such a report. We since beginning talks about the objective of assessment is to get the objective evidence, the facts to prove that they are in the requirement side, not to find faults but to find the facts. Okay. Please be remember that you continue making notes, your notes during assessment. Don't shy away making notes thinking that what hospital staff or personnel or the official will think about you while you make a note, but it's very, very important because you can't remember during 2 or 3 days of stay in that hospital that what you have observed. So please ensure that you continuously make your notes for the strengths or the weaknesses of the organization against the set of requirements which you are looking for the compliance. And make sure that your notes are referenced properly so that you can link with the specific incident, if it is a non-conformity or a strength, where it was, how it was, who was related. So it's a reference to a specific department or section or staff is very, very important while you make a note. So your notes are essentially to be written and then they are properly referenced. And the document review is a very, very critical and important aspect of any assessment. As you know, when you get to a request for carrying out on-site assessment, you get a set of documents which are submitted by the hospitals, and you need to review those documents and to see whether they are in compliance with the requirements of anyways hospital accreditation standards. And if you don't do that, homework, probably you might not get an in-depth insight of documentation, number one. Number two, about the organization functioning when you go on site. So once if you prepare before you reach the site, it would really help you to carry out a very, very smooth process of assessment. So we request you all, please go through the documents. If you go to the documents, you know what are their strengths or what is lacking. So you can just ask if something is not there, and then while you have the knowledge of those systems in place, you can easily carry out assessment with objectivity. You need not to just refer each edge and every time when you are running, into the organization, going to different departments, sections, areas, and cross-referencing the documents. So it will take a lot of time, and probably at that time you won't get a reliable result. So it need to be cover all the requirements of all the objective elements, all the standards, and whatever is given in the standards requirements. The inadequacies in the documentations are to be removed before the on-site assessment is actually fairly critical and very, very important. If you bring out which in documentation that they are not exactly meeting the requirement or not addressing the requirement which they are actually supposed to, so you can let them know beforehand you reach there, so that when you reach there, when you arrive at the site, they are there, and it makes the situation for both assessor and assessee very, very easy in terms of documentation requirements. So you're preparing for on-site assessment might cover the following. You need to prepare your assessment plan as your principal assessor, basically in their capacity, prepare an assessment plan taking the team into consideration and the scope of assessment, and assigning the work to the different team members within the team, and then preparing the working document. And so when you are on site, you are preparing yourself, and you have to conduct a pre-assessment team briefing, and ideally it should be done evening before the start of the assessment next day morning. So if you are planning to start next day morning, so today evening, at the moment like we are talking to each other, it should be the team pre-briefing, So we get introduced to each other and then plan and who's going to do what, and if there is a needed change in the assessment plan which you have already communicated to the hospital prior to arrival, you make those certain changes and let hospital know in the morning when you start your opening meeting. And then you start your opening meeting in the next day. Communication during the assessment is very important. Communication with the organization, communication within the team. If any team member would like to communicate to another team member for a significant finding which need to be looked at the area which the other assessment team member is looking at, probably you have to establish a good communication system. And then collecting and verifying information. So you need to collect the information which is in compliance or otherwise, and you need to make sure that they are verified when you are doing that. And how you can conduct those assessments, how you can get the objective evidence is by way of different technologies and techniques, I would say, the methodologies. The staff is key, so you can interview staff in different areas to find out about the requirements, their knowledge about the standards, concerned standards. You can't imagine, you should not think that every staff knows everything. And they're not supposed to do everything, and they're not supposed to know everything as well. So what the requirements say, the staff concerned in a specific area should know the requirements, the standards of that particular area. So you interview staff keeping those things in mind and get to know what they know or what they don't know. And you examine physically the facilities around. You observe. Why it's not necessarily either talking to someone, but you sometimes observe, and this observation is quite critical sometimes when you're walking through the corridor, going through the different sections. So you keep observing things, what's going on, and probably that might help in getting to know what they are doing. A review of documentation, examining records and reports. So talking to staff, talking to people, observing facility, examining facility, documentation, as well the records which have been generated in a couple of months prior to your arrival there. You review those and see whether those records are in alignment with the requirements of the accreditation standard. So you're examining the records probably lead to the traceability of activity. When you review a record, you can find where this was generated and what was the reason to start this document, so you get the traceability. The records are complete and they're correct and very, very critical. particularly the case sheet of the patients, that whether they are properly written, or the prescription for a patient, whether it's completely written as the standard says, okay, legible bold letters or capital letters, the dosage, specific route, all these things, and they are correct. And legibility is important, understandable in a manner the patient or client can understand. Filing is very critical. Filing, how they file their records and how they put them for storage, and if need be for retrieving, how they archive. And what are the management system and clinical records, because if quality system related documents or the patient care related documents, how they segregate and how they record and report. So when you complete the assessment, and when is the assessment considered to be complete? So it's not that when you do the opening meeting or you finish your assessment by closing meeting is considered as complete. No, it's not. In general, the assessment is considered as complete when the entire loop is completed. And what I mean with the entire loop is you start your assessment, you prepare a report, submit to the NABH. If there is a need for a hospital to take corrective action, they do so. Then corrective action is submitted to you. You take a look at it. You close those gaps if you are satisfied with the corrective actions proposed by the hospital, and then come back to Secretariat. So once this loop is covered and complete, and then only it's considered as complete. And throughout the assessment, you manage your time. It's very, very important, because you are not there for indefinite time. You are given a specific timeline. You are there for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, whatever, and you have limited resources in terms of your assessment team members. So you have to manage your time, and that you can only do when you have made your plan efficiently and you have done your homework. You know what are the areas of hospital. You know what are the documentation. These things will help you put you on track. Stay on track, as I mentioned. Means you should not deviate from your predefined timetable. Certain interesting things in a hospital, for example, a new equipment, a new technology, something innovative, should not distract you from conducting your usual assessment. If you are really interested to know something about which is innovative, new, technologically advanced, you might request our hospitals to come back again or a later time to have a look at it, but not on the cost of the time which you have assigned for your assessments. As I mentioned in the beginning, continuously record your findings. Remain impartial and objective. It should not be reflecting your views, what you have been doing in our hospital. It should not. You should look the organization in view of the requirement of the accreditation standards and their compliances. The physical structure might be different from your own hospital, your own practices. You should not impose those what you have in your mind. You should be open-minded, ready to accept variable techniques, methodologies, and processes. So remain impartial, objective. All activities in the assessment follow-up are to be completed by the healthcare organization. So it means when you put a report forward to us, we send back to them, they take an action, come back to us, again we send it to them. So it's all back and forth, two-way traffic. After the assessment is completed, then hospital, as I already mentioned, they take necessary corrective actions on the non-compliances which you have raised and examine consequences of other work. It means if you raise an ANSI in, say, OPD or a critical area or some area, it might have impact on some other areas. So you have to look at the hospital. You have to look at that as well, whether it's getting affected somewhere else. So the hospital need to take care of that. Investigate underlying causes, why it happened. Implement actions to eliminate these causes. We call preventive actions and corrective actions. And very, very fancily we use these words, but actually we need to really understand the implications, and we need to monitor the situation from time to time. And followed by us as an NABH, an accreditation organization, about the evaluation of effectiveness of the corrective actions measures they have taken. A review of new or amended documentation if they have submitted in line with the compliance with the requirements when you have raised those concerns. And examine the records for consistency, completeness, and full or partial reassessment if need be. if the accreditation committee review the report and find there are certain things need to be done again, so they may ask for a verification or another assessment to look at the effectiveness of the corrective actions. And when an NABH accreditation body is happy with those things, it may lead to grant of accreditation to hospital. It may advise the scope of details of accreditation, and it may be along with the recommendations for granting accreditation might list out certain specific conditions, special conditions in terms of human resources, in terms of practices, in terms of processes, that they need to do it within a specific time given to them. And set date for first surveillance, usually as per our policy, and the first surveillance, this is only one surveillance within 3-year cycle, is to be happen with somewhere from 15 to 17 months of grant of accreditation date. And so non-conformance, how you write those actually effectively. So what is non-conformity? Basically the non-conformity is a non-fulfillment of a requirement, and what requirement at the moment here means is the objective element of the accreditation standard or a standard per se. So if we don't, if the hospital do not fulfill or meet the requirement of a standard or objective element, it means there is a non-conformity. And how you actually score, you all know very well that we score on 3 scales, 0, 5, and 10. So it's non-conformity, partial, or the full compliance. So there are 3 scales, 0, 5, 10. And how we have further divided recently to make it more objective. Otherwise, it's very difficult how to say 0 or 5 is 10. And there are a lot of variations when there is no guideline to support what 0, 5, 10 does mean. So we have recently come out, and I think you all know, and just reiterating again to ensure that you all know, are aware, and use it basically. If you pick some samples, and out of those sample size, if less than 30% are in compliance with 0. If the samples you picked, and out of those 31 to 70% of the samples complying is 5, and if there is a compliance to the sample size you picked up, is more than 70%, you score a 10. So 10 does not mean 100%, and 0 does not mean 0. So it's less than 30, 31 to 70, and more than 70. And these non-conformances and conformances can be related to a management system, maybe clinical functions, maybe the statutory requirements, or maybe a failure to do something which is required, or a difference between a work practice and the document. So we say you do what you write, or you write what you do, and whatever you write correctly. So it's like that. So you have to check whether they are meeting these requirements. If it's not, it means there is a deviation. It's becoming non-conformity. So statements of non-conformity is very critical when you states, and they must be non-blaming of facts. It should not be indicating a blame to an organization. It's based on a recorded objective evidence which you have gathered last 2 days or 3 days. If they directly relate to the accreditation standards or any specific document requirement, not relate to something which I think it should be. What's the purpose? The purpose is to inform the CISI who is undergoing assessment how the system has not addressed a specific requirement, and are the starting points for effective corrective actions. So if they understood it clearly, probably they might take corrective actions properly, implement it, and might be effective. And the record on which the assessor bases his or her assessment conclusion, so based on the findings at the end of the day, actually culminate the entire report, the final findings. So briefly, not going to detail, as you all know, when you are on site, you have to do 2 important tasks or activity. The first thing is an opening meeting, when you just get into the hospital and you formally start your assessment process, and then before you exit, you conduct a closing meeting. And these opening and closing meeting has a great importance. During opening meeting, what you do, you introduce yourself, you talk about the purpose, talk about the scope, you talk about the assessment process, you talk about the plan which you have created for themselves or for the hospital, you talk about if there's any changes, or do you have any special arrangements, requirements, like you are vegetarian for meals, or if you need some other assistance for translation, and like that, but not the special requirements which actually are not fitting into the assessment process. Sampling, how you're going to sample, and you must mention that all findings, all observations, all recordings would be kept confidential, cannot be shared, will not be shared with anybody else other than NABH or by if ordered by court of law. So that's how you conduct your opening meeting. You talk about scoring, that you would be scoring different objective elements of the standards. You might request copies of documents, the sources, or the personal which you need during assessment to facilitate it. Requirement of guides to take you around the hospital, certain ground rules. You can ask the hospital, you must ask in fair sense that if there are any ground rules to be followed by the assessment team which are prevalent, need to be followed by team, please let us know. There may be certain requirements when you'll say, okay, this is a very restricted area, you need to enter. If you want, you have to ask this authorization. So you must ask, talking about the exit routes, sometimes an emergency, or if something is there existing in a hospital which they would not want to allow you to just go freely, but if that's covered within the assessment process and the scope, you have to visit. They won't deny, but there may be rules defined by them. Like simple rule, everybody knows. You will find on a door restricted entry. It means it's a restricted entry. It's not a thoroughfare, So if they've said, okay, these only people can enter, but you are not among those people, so you have to take a specific authorization. And please feel free. You should not feel that I am an assessor, I have access, I have thoroughfare anywhere in the organization. No, they might, but I think we should respect and we should ask if there are ground rules set for anyone who is coming to the organization. And then you proceed for the closing meeting at the end of the last day of your assessment. And you must say if they need to ask some clarification, please tell them. Please feel free to ask if you have some clarifications to seek from any of us. Similarly, the closing meeting, you have to thank them for their all support, hospitality. Again, objective, scope, and criteria of findings. You briefly tell them what are the findings. Limitations in terms of you can't have 100% sampling. It's only sample based. You must tell them. And confidentially, again, you have to mention, as you mentioned in the opening meeting, you might have some discussions, clarifications, which might be asked from any of the staff member in the hospital, and tell them what is the next step, and then close. Thank you very much. And very important, do not give any recommendation that hospital is, meets the requirement of accreditation. We hospital for accreditation. We recommend this. No. Please adhere to the specific requirements, objective elements, standards, and just give a status report whether the hospital is complying to specific objective elements or are not complying. Just a specific status report. You are not supposed to give any recommendations. Important, how you write a report, very critical. And as you all know, we now have from couple of months that's entirely online system, and you all are requested, suggested, advised to use online system. We are not using any hard copy at the moment. There might be some deviation based on specific circumstances prevailing at the time of assessments or any other specific situations, but not in general. So I would request all of you, and please communicate or convey this message of mine or us to all your friends, sisters, that online system must be used. If not, very critically I can say it, because the entire system is online, and starting from your availability and then assigning. So if you won't show up and you won't show that you are available through online system, probably our system might not pick you as an assessor, because the staff won't know what's going on here and there. So they will just go to the availability of assessor and pick from them. If you have not shown up, they are not going to call you because they don't know. The system is designed in a manner that is very effective in terms of giving a list of assessors who actually can be picked up from a pool, depending on the location, size, or different things. So if you are not showing up your availability through a system, you might not be picked up. So your report should be complete in all senses. It must be accurate, concise, and clear. So the accreditation committee or the secretariat person sitting here going through the report must know what's gone there. And it's a collective responsibility of team members. Please remember it. Collective responsibility of all team members. It's not just the principal assessor who is responsible to prepare the assessment report. In some of the cases, it has been observed the assessor had just given the observation to principal assessor and left the place, gone here and there, or not, or is there but not showing interest to complete the report. It should not be happening. It's a collective effort of all team members for that specific assessment. And then handing over the report, and the HF4 is the final format report, which is now you have to fill in all. You can fill all those reports. You can take a print out, and you can sign it. You can scan it, upload it in the system. And if it's not possible at that time to do all these things, but you can fill it up, that's also okay. But in case you are able to fill up the report and you are able to take out the print, scan, and because their signature is also required, so take a print, sign it, get signed by the hospital authority, and then you might give a Xerox copy of that report to them, upload on the system if possible at that time, and a hard copy can be sent to us. Please do not give a scoring sheet to the hospital. So there is a scoring sheet 0, 5, 10. You have to score for entire 683 objective elements, if I'm not wrong at the moment. Do not give the scoring sheet with a final score to them. Okay? Remember that the assessor's notes are to be sent only to those, the notes which you have been noting down, writing during your assessment, to be sent to us. Now it's all online, so you have to just keep in, key in all your observation into the system. Some useful tips might help you. Your concepts are expressed clearly and simply. Your language, yes, is very important for communication. Please avoid trying to impress by using ceremonial, lengthy, and pretentious and overly complex words. Sometimes I don't understand what someone has written. They are very exhaustive in nature. Means simple language, what we understand. The words don't mean any complex word does not mean any make sense, but if they are not understood by the person who is reading it. So if person reading it get to know what you want to convey is most important than the person don't get to know what you're writing and you want to convey. So just the highest commitment of the top management, and at the end you write there are n number of problems. So there is no point of giving those ceremonial addresses when actually things are not there evident on ground. Use active rather than passive sentence whenever possible, feasible, and the staff members or the patients, they should not be identified by name. If you have the ID number, probably you might put, or you put something else, the A. Please, the whole purpose is not to make someone directly responsible for that. As you know, you work in a hospital. If your name is put in the report which is not good, probably management come back to you, hey, what have you done is you. So I think as a basic tip, as a basic principle, they should not highlight a specific person or a patient. If something is to be referred, please use the code words, or you can say in simple language, the staff interviewed or patient interviewed. You need to put even an ID number or the number of patients or staff interviewed might be a good idea to put that given sample size. So this is all about from my side, ladies and gentlemen, and if you have the questions, probably at the end of the webinar when we both are finished, you would have an opportunity to raise your questions. And of course, if that not happen in a very short of time, you can definitely send questions through email to Prashant, which we would try to address and send back to you. So with this, I thank you once again for your presence, and hopefully I can't hear you because it's webinar, so patient hearing, and you were there during the course of webinar. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a nice evening. Over to you, Prashant.
Thank you, sir, for such an enlightening session. Now moving to the second part of the session, which will be presented by Dr. Aarti Verma. Here we will take a break of 5 minutes. So I request everyone to be online and please don't go anywhere. Yeah, ma'am, you can hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You were not hearing me, na? Only what I was saying. Prashant, I have to mute. I don't know how.
And I'm coming.
Now you say something.
Hello.
Mute कर दिया मैंने.
I can start? Yes. So good evening, everyone. I think after Dr. Rana's very comprehensive and yet very, very meaningful presentation, we will just revisit some of the behavioral as well as assessment checkpoints that are very critical. I think it's very important to reiterate that the assessors, all of us, we are the face of NABH when we go out into the community. And the way we conduct ourselves is extremely, extremely reflective of the culture that NABH wants, the professionalism that NABH wants to be shown as, and also its reputation as a identity and as a very important national level identity. So the behavior of each one of us has to reflect integrity, professionalism, honesty, and very true to the purpose. Now, it is also difficult. We are all individuals practicing in our own way. We are all unique people with different types of behaviors. And I understand it is difficult to wear the same hat and behave in the same manner. But some things that I think are coming back to NABH as and sometimes causing embarrassment to the teams is something that we want to reduce. Okay, we don't want any hospital to give us a chance to point a finger at us. All the hard work that we do, all the technical aspects that we learn, we don't want any hospital team or any assessor to point a finger at us because it's not the right way to be. So this talk today is going to reiterate some of the behavioral things that we must avoid, okay? So one of the things is like we had a, unfortunately we had a complaint very recently in NABH where one of the assessors was at the closing meeting saying, आपका दिल धड़क धक धक हो रहा है, and all sorts of slang language being used, over familiar language being used, which the hospital team did not like. Please make sure that we conduct ourselves in a very, very professional manner. I have to just start the slide. Just 1 second. I think the slide is not going. Yeah. So we are trained, NABH assessors are trained and skilled in assessment techniques. Okay. And we must be very, very good at this. However, there are many unknowns, and sometimes expectations are, for us to be 100% prepared are difficult. Okay. When we go for assessment, sometimes we are asked to entry-level standards, sometimes we are asked to go and do SHCO, other times we go and do ECHS and CGHS, sometimes we go and do verification and focus assessments, others we do surveillance, reassessments, pre-assessments. So we must be very clear that, we must restrict what we look for during the assessment based on the scope of the assessment, not just the scope of the HCO. So if we are going to assess entry-level standards, we must focus on the entry-level standards only. So please keep that in mind. And one way to go about this is that before you go for your assessment, please go through the standards once more, just to, zoom in. Just go through the ECHS checklist once more. refresh your mind about the verification part if you're going for a verification. If you're going for a focus or a verification assessment, you are meant to focus only on the small closure of non-compliances. You should not go beyond that. So these things have to be very, very focused. Don't also go beyond the scope of the standard. So there we are finding NCs being written by us where we are quoting personal examples, we are quoting best practices, we are quoting things which are not even mentioned in NABH or given any guidance by NABH. So for instance, one assessor went and wrote an NC that every ICU bed should have a hand wash sink installed next to it, next to the bed. Now these standards are not written anywhere in India, so we should not go beyond that. We should also look at the common averages of how our country is structured and how our country's healthcare system is run. Please don't go beyond the scope, and also don't go beyond the scope of even a legal compliance verification. We have to restrict ourselves. We are doing a sampling audit, so please don't go to extremes of saying, the hospital has to put ramps or the hospital has to do make a wall over here. So please restrict that. Examples are coming in repeatedly that zoning in the OT is not unidirectional, the physical infrastructure. And nowhere has NABH said that you need to have a zoning in such a manner. So please don't write NCs, again I'm reiterating, which are not specified by NABH. And also we need to update ourselves. Nowhere in the world now, times have changed. People are saying you can have the same inflow and outflow of dirty and clean corridors, provided your process management is all right. So if we are going to review the OT, please stick to the guidelines that NABH has published and follow those. Okay. Of course, before we go for our assessment, we must be well informed about the hospital, about the venue, any special requirements. Carry the materials with us that is the NABH standard book and any reference material. Please make it a point to be familiar with the SOPs. It takes time to go through the SOPs. We are all busy in our other day-to-day work, but a commitment for an assessment means that you need to understand the hospital, understand its scope, understand the documents that it has so painstakingly prepared, and also give them feedback on the documentation. Okay. Follow protocols when you are there. So if you are meant to follow go to a restricted area and you're meant to wear a PPE, you should be doing that. Carry your ID badges if the hospital is giving you them, and make sure that you're following the normal well-groomed dress code. During the briefing and closing sessions, it's important to share the findings with the HCO, maybe a closed group. You don't need the full group over there, but it's important to communicate. Communicate also with your team. So a debriefing and sharing of all the NCs or observations that have happened during the day and what all you found should be shared, especially with the principal assessor. If you get stuck with any point, you are not sure whether the particular observation is an NC or is it not an NC, you can always reach out to NABH and to the secretariat and send an email to them or ring up Prashant or Dr. Rana and get clarification on any doubt that you may have regarding an NC. NABH has now taken up a lot of programs like these webinars to further our own professional development and skills, so that we continuously improve ourselves and raise our confidence and caliber. So please do proactively participate in all these programs. Avoid any conflict of interest situations, such as a consultancy or a relationship with an agency which may have a involvement with the NABH accreditation. So these things are very important from an integrity perspective. When we are doing our assessment, we are finding some assessors are quite closed and quite preconceived in their notions. So, for an example, an assessor has commented that we have a special machine to check torn linen, you should also have the same. So remove that and remove any kind of personal bias or professional bias that you may have against your colleagues or against somebody who may or be represented in the assessee hospital. And we are, by the way, getting feedback that there are certain likes and dislikes we have in our professional lives and or personal lives, and when we go to those hospitals where those people are either working in quality or working in any other function, the assessor starts having a bias. And we are getting about this in writing. So please be careful that you wear a very neutral hat when you are an assessor. Are you randomized? Good if you take so that you get practice on the ground. Once again repeating, please do not indulge in unethical practices like inflated bills being submitted to the hospitals, offering consultancy, asking for sponsored trips around the place like a tourist would, or even asking for a job, or any unnecessary favors, asking for gifts or insisting on very high class accommodation or expensive air tickets. We have to improve our capability to use technology during assessment, so we must practice and be good at it. If we are not good at it, it can always be learned and improved. And as you know, all assessments now are on the digital mode, so it's very critical that we use technology for reporting, use if you want handheld devices. Familiarize yourself with if the hospital has an EMR and they want you to check a medical document through that, so they should give you the ability to review it, and you should feel comfortable using technology. Of course, you may also be vulnerable to some pressures from the hospital or from professional peers or some kind of emotional pressures, that we have worked so hard, how can you find this NC, or I'll get into trouble, or I'll lose my job. So we must not be able to bow down to pressure and give in, become a victim of any type of pressure. We are there to do a job. We are there to assess a standard against the NABH and see the practice, and our job is to objectively record it and inform. Okay. Of course, don't allow distractions, that you are getting people to come and meet you in that city whom you have, your relatives or visitors, or eating out too much during the assessment time. We have also found a few stray comments about assessors being judgmental, arrogant, or passing personal remarks. Please don't demean anyone or the hospital after you have found the deficiencies. There have been cases where staff has started crying. Some have given in their resignation. So, one harsh criticism completely negates all the good work that the hospital is doing, and the entire mood of the team at the hospital goes bad. So we must be very, very cautious on how you explain a deficiency. And please do not criticize or make personal comments about the quality team. Okay? So that is also not
Hello everyone, this is Prashant. Sorry for the interruption. Actually the computer got crashed. So it will take around 5 minutes more to start the session. and continue from where ma'am has left. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Please be online. Please don't go anywhere. We have not finished yet. This is Prashant again from NABH. There is some problem with Dr. Aarti's laptop. So please be patient. She will be back in 2 or 3 minutes. Sorry for the inconvenience caused.
Can you hear? Can you hear me now?
Ma'am, I can hear you. Start the session.
So sorry about the little bit of a gap. It's not coming as a... Now? Maintain confidentiality. हाँ. Stop sharing. He has to invite me, na?
शेयर कर लिया आपने? कोई नहीं आया?
No. Show my screen.
थैंक यू आ गया.
अब ठीक है?
कौन सी स्लाइड आ रही है आपने?
Maintain confidentiality.
Yes, ma'am.
नहीं हुआ?
हाँ, maintain.
Yeah. Sorry about the gap. There was a technology glitch. So just repeating that we must maintain confidentiality and do not share whatever you are finding in one assessment with any other hospital, with assessors who are not on the team, with any third party, and destroy any records that you have as soon as the usage is over. Please do not also share the reports with which are confidential with the HCO, and don't ask the HCO to type the reports, because then you are disclosing everything. So when you are taking help from them, it is fine, but limit it to what they are meant to see. We are also finding some assessors are doing loose talk and gossiping, where when they meet friends and they get a chance to be casual, I'm looking comments like I'm looking for a job change, or I won't mind joining this hospital, or discussing matters outside the scope of assessment. You know, how come my nurses are getting better salary than in your hospital, or asking for salaries of staff, asking staff or files to be sent to the hotel for review because you could not keep time and manage the assessment properly. All these things, mind you, please note very importantly, all of us are being watched. We are being watched by more than 100 people in the hospital, and every word you utter is going to have a powerful impact, because assessors are treated with a very high degree of respect. And I don't think we underestimate the power and the influence that we are showing when we go to a hospital. Be very careful about how you behave and your code of conduct. Don't make any loose comments about anybody. Don't insist on sky-high corrective measures, like if you don't have this part in your software, with EHR, how can you meet the NABH requirements? Or I've given you an example already, asking them to change physical infrastructure based on your own perceptions, where it is not given by NABH. Redesign the CSSD, relocate departments, redesign the OT. These are just examples. There are many cases coming up which should not be done. Please restrict. And do not enter into arguments. If you do have a conflict, try and resolve it. We are also finding that many hospitals, they succumb to the pressure of an assessor and they consider it as bullying. So the assessor is very rude and says, I'm not going to listen to you. I've decided this is wrong. And the hospital does not want to raise the issue with NABH, and they just succumb and think, you know, that, oh, if we say anything to the assessor, they will make the assessment even worse and get us into trouble. So there is a sense of fear and threat which we are giving forward to them. It is our behavior, how we are talking, how much arrogance we are showing. So it's very important that we treat them as our customers. We treat them as our customers. We are not inspectors. We are not, you know, we have to make sure that we are going there as peers with the highest degree of respect for the hospital. Please don't enter into unnecessary arguments, and don't just stop them from speaking or trying to explain things when they want to. And of course, also, we must not be too timid. We are also finding that many assessors, apart from the principal assessors, they go to a ward, or they go to a clinical area or a non-clinical area, and they come back and say, "Mujhe to koi NC nahi mila." So I think it is important that we take the assessments very, very seriously and look at each and every perspective, and also don't get caught that the hospital knows that the assessor ko itna knowledge ya experience nahi hai. we are getting cases also in with such comments. So a lot of phone calls are coming in, apart from people not writing in the feedback form, but they do tend to ring up NABH and give informal feedback about their feeling intimidated or bullied, or rude behavior, or personal remarks made by an assessor, or an assessor not being open, or an assessor asking for too much. The other contradiction we are finding is that the assessors write a lot of NCs, but in the HAF4, in the summary, they praise the hospital like anything. That this is the best hospital in the world in terms of summary. Now this becomes a big problem for the accreditation committee and the appeals committee, as well as the assessee hospital, because they start thinking that they are fantastic in their work, and then when they are asked that no, we are not satisfied, or you don't meet the accreditation requirements, or your accreditation is being denied, or you are being asked to go for a verification visit, all of them then start complaining and saying, but the HAF4, nobody told us that we were bad. Everybody only praised us in everything that we are, and here is the documentation which proves it. So again, it's a very delicate balance we have to make. If you are finding that the hospital in the HAF4 also, we should be very objective. State what is good, state what is bad. And please don't take responsibility for sharing good results with them. That, oh, you're going to get the accreditation. Do not disclose the scores. Scoring is to be confidential. So these are some of the common things that we would like you to follow. Also a refresher that please use the NABH prescribed forms. Don't create or modify them, and don't create your own forms. Keep the latest versions and delete the previous versions. So you have to have a fine balance between encouragement as well as sharing the negatives. And the overall HAF4 should give a flavor of the true picture of where the hospital is in terms of strengths as well as opportunities for improvement. So I will stop with that, and my concluding slide is that we are professional peers and a partner to the HCOs. We are not above them, we are not inspectors, so don't misuse the power and the influence that we have, which NABH has given us when we go out to do assessments. Thank you. So we hope we'll open this up. Prashant, over to you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your enlightening session. Now we will start the question and answer session. I would request Dr. Rana to unmute yourself. Sir, please unmute.
Yes, Prashant.
Yes, sir. The first question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. The first question I am taking from Dr. Rajiv Kumar. Dr. Rajiv, can you hear me?
Hello, yes.
Yeah, you can ask your question directly to our speakers.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Rajiv. How are you?
I am fine, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, this is regarding document review. Dr. Rana told us most of the time we are not getting updated documents from the NABH, even despite of asking to the SCO, and the SCO is not sending us documents, essential documents to us to review before going for the assessment. And it's a very, we are facing difficulties to know about if we are going for the first time for the surveillance or the assessment. So it's a very difficult scenario to get to review the documents on site after reaching the SCO. And another thing is HF2, we are trying our best to upload all the reports online, and I'm doing for the most of the assessments, but HF2 is not uploading online. So that's the major problem I am facing.
Okay. So coming to the first question, the document which are given to you before the proceed for assessment, yes, I think that's a valid point, and we are trying hard now to get all the documents from the hospital well before we proceed for assessment, so that we can share with you before you go, so that you can review those documents. So I think this point is well taken, and so we'll try our best to give the documents for review before you go proceed for the on-site assessment. And the second point related to the document online HAF2. Actually, HAF2 is actually you are not. It's not there online. What you can do is just you can download it. I just inquired from my colleagues, as we have not moved to totally online system because of many issues, including the assessor has not logged into the online system, hospital has not submitted those online systems. So there are mix of possibilities at the moment. So what we are practicing currently till move to totally online system is that you fill all your observation. You can download this HAF2 and you can fill it. Okay, you need not to send to us. You need not to send to us. And HAF4 you fill, you take a print, sign it, signed by the principal assessor, get signed by the hospital authority, and make Xerox copy, give it to the hospital, and the original you send it to us as a paper copy. Okay, so that's the practice at the moment which we are adopting. So you no need to put everything on scanning, nothing. Just HAF4, HAF2 you download, use it while you're scribbling, you need not to send it to us.
And I think adding to what Dr. Rana is saying, Rajiv, please feel free to give this feedback on a real-time basis also.
Yeah.
Just write an email in, to Prashant, Dr. Rana, Dr. Kalra, so that this can be acted upon promptly.
Exactly.
So we don't want you to face difficulties also when you're doing the assessment.
Yes, that will help us in resolving those issues if we come across then and there,
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, madam. Now I am taking the second question, which is for Dr. Aarti, and it is from Hemant Bhatnagar. The question is that what is renewal audit checklist?
What is?
RA checklist.
Reassessment checklist?
Yes.
The reassessment is done as a full assessment, Hemant, and the 4th edition checklist is just getting developed, which will be circulated to everybody to help you out. Some people have made their own checklists, but the scope of a re-accreditation is as much as full as it is as a final assessment, except that you would also want to see more improvements under CQI chapter.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
I hope I've been able to answer the question.
Yeah. Ma'am, the next question I'm taking from Dr. Sunil Munkur. Dr. Sunil, can you hear me? Dr. Sunil? I think he cannot hear us, ma'am and sir. So moving ahead, the next question again from Dr. Hemant Bhatnagar. Just wanted to know, sir, that can we submit HAF2 handwritten?
Prashant, I just mentioned that they need not to submit the HAF2 to us.
Okay.
Just for their own record. The rest of the things has been converted to the non-conformities and or the strengths. Yes. They are already been built in this online software, so they need not to fill and send the handwritten copies of HAF to us.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. The next question is from Dr. Naveen Chug. Dr. Naveen, you can ask your question. Dr. Naveen, sir, Dr. Naveen's question is that, is it possible to convert our forms in Excel as it is easy to upload directly?
Now see, as far as the uploading is concerned, there is no difference between the Excel or the Word file or even the PDF, because there's the same amount of uploading speed. It depends on the internet activity, connectivity, and the speed. So the converting to the Excel sheet does not make any difference. And in fact, many of the files which we have created in Word file is actually cannot be properly transported to the Excel file. So that's the reason we are not doing it. But we are trying our best to provide a full online system where you need not to worry about where to upload. Certain documents which need to be uploaded, we will make it easy for uploading. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. The next question is from Dr. Krishnamurthy. Dr. Krishnamurthy, can you hear us? Dr. Krishnamurthy? Sir, I think he cannot hear us. Yeah. Sir, this is all from question and answer session because we have not received any more questions. So
Okay.
Yeah, ma'am, one question more. I've just received that. How often and where the real-time tracer methodology should be applied in clinical process assessment, as it is the time-consuming and has inherent Hawthorne effect? It is from Amir.
So, yes, so NABH has not formally defined where we will use tracer methodology, but some of the areas that where you are assessing, I think you can use medication process. You can take 1 or 2, 3 examples and look at either a horizontal or across vertical issues also, and do a tracer methodology to help you strengthen. So like you can look at the medication flow process, you can do some non-clinical areas like fire safety, end-to-end tracer from a mock drill to records to training. So look at it that way. In 1 or 2 clinical areas, you can correlate between one doctor seeing, say, a referral. The multidisciplinary working system can be, also assessed through a tracer. We have not specified, and I think it's a good question that you have raised. We should ask NABH to make a formal structure for tracer methodology as part of the assessment in the coming months, so that the assessors are guided more on.
Good point.
We'll take this out.
Sure.
Okay,
So thank you for that feedback.
okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Now we are ending the question and answer session, and first I would like to thank our speakers for such an excellent session, and thank you all the assessors for showing your cooperation and be patient. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so
Prashant.
much.
Thank you for the wonderful arrangement you have done. Thank you very much, Prashant.
Thank you. And thank you to the assessors for a patient hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Good night. Bye. Good night. Evening.